Welcome to a podcast on marketing. I'm your host, Jordan Ogren, and this is a podcast where we talk about marketing. So my first question is, who are you and what do you do?
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Jordan. My name is Derek Laliberte. Um, you don't hear me pronounce my last name too often because I actually enjoy listening to people struggle with it. So I typically will say, "Oh my gosh, you got it right," and then they're super proud of themselves, and it's this way of me making people feel a little bit more okay. Uh, I live in a tiny little corner of northeastern Indiana. Got a couple kids. I got a 12-year-old son, 14-year-old daughter. I've been married to my wife Amy for about 16 and a half years. We live in a rural area, and I think who are you is such an interesting question, and what do you do is such an interesting question as well. I think you can get a lot of different answers. I guess I'll start by saying I don't really define myself by what I do. To be totally transparent with you, who am I? I think if I said anything other than the fact that I am a man of faith, then I wouldn't be a man of faith. So I will say that first and foremost. That's what I put my faith and belief in is a relationship with Jesus. And aside from that, I do a little bit of marketing. I have a company called Disruptur. I'm the technically my title is the chief disruptor, but rather than get into all the details around who Disruptor is at this point, maybe we'll get into that. But Disruptor was my side hustle for the last couple of years, and one of my clients approached me in November about buying Disruptor from me and letting me run it and grow it the way I want to do it without the worry of everything you'd normally worry about as an entrepreneur. So I quit my job in technology and have been doing this full time for about 4 months, part time for the better part of 2 years.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, welcome to the show, man. I enjoy that you, as I always ask the question, I realize that there is inherently deepness to the question, as simple as it sounds. Who are you? It's like, oh, I'm a marketer, but I enjoy the places you kind of went with that, as I do feel a lot of times we kind of maybe not have the correct priority list of who we are in a sense, and that's really key to living, I think, a good life, is having that in the proper order, which I think you are definitely there with kind of the faith and all that being first and foremost. So one of my
Right on.
second first questions that I want to throw to you is kind of like, what are you obsessed with right now? Maybe in business marketing, but obviously really anywhere. What are you obsessing over lately?
Well, I am in this. I'm surfing the blue ocean right now. I'm obsessed over actually spending time thinking about the future of Disruptor. So, where do I take it? I mean, in the past, I had very, very specific silos and areas of expertise that I played in. But coming from the software world, typically what you tell your clients is we're going to build a minimum viable product, right? And we're going to let the market tell us who we are. We're going to let them respond, and then we're going to go towards the direction that they're telling us to go. I am doing that. So, one of the things that I'm really, really excited about is some of the direction that my clients have been taking me lately. So, marketing, sales process, prospecting playbooks. I think ultimately Disruptor is a creative agency. I see myself going down that road, and the things that I've been doing for clients now are sort of those things that fall not to the wayside, but they're done in addition to supporting the main thing that Disruptor will do, um, which is a creative agency, creating a campaign and everything that you would think would go along with that, plus so many other things. But the real thing that I find myself obsessing over, maybe you want to use that word, is emotional intelligence and empathy. Like, how do I tie those into Disruptor? And it is really interesting because about a month ago, I'm speaking to a client who is a offshore software development company with almost 500 developers in India, and their sales marketing team are here stateside, and they actually have a portion of what they do is in New Zealand. And they came to me and said, you've I did a bunch of marketing sales stuff for them. They said, we want you to work with our development team on like a mentorship program. And so we talked through what that was. And he had said, I basically told him, like, look, I've done this in my personal life, but I haven't done this professionally. He said, I know, I think you'd be perfect to do it. So it's already something I've been passionate about, but then to hear my client tell me that this is something that they see in me was a really cool learning experience. So I essentially signed up to do about 5 months worth of these sessions with them, which is about 2 sessions a month, which has been super, super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like it, just the first bit you were talking about the MVP, allowing it to kind of flow where it may once you kind of put it out there, which it seems like you're doing, and I think that's a key or a good way to succeed is to not be too firm in what you want it to be or what you think it has to be, and you're just more flexible to letting kind of things dictate or direct, maybe is a better word, direct kind of where you're going with it. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how do you define marketing? Obviously, there's many different definitions, but to you, like, what's the definition of marketing? What is it for? What's the job that it should get done?
Yeah, I think in the simplest layman's terms, marketing is putting your crap in front of the people that need to see your crap. That is, for the longest time, I really struggled with confidence centered around marketing because maybe my technical marketing skills aren't that great. Maybe I don't feel that good about, some of the vision of marketing, understanding the dynamics of it. But I think what you find, just like in sales is split. So now there's account managers or account executives, and then there's SDRs, because prospecting and closing are they need each other, but you can't really be really, really good at one and also really good at the other. I think marketing is somewhat similar in the fact that you can be very, very technical and understand segmenting audiences and creating ads and looking at analytics, A/B testing, workflows, all the stuff that you would consider technical. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're very, very good at the creative side of things. And what I found is that few and far between are good at both, whether it's sales or marketing. Hmm. So as far as defining marketing, I think just the simplest definition of marketing, forgive me for being so blunt, is it's just really putting you in front of the people that need to know who you are. Hmm. I mean, you could get a little bit deep and say it's converting, visitors into opportunities, but.
Yeah, no, I think the simple definition is key, right? If you can't explain it to a 5th grader or, 6-year-old, then you don't really understand. And I think that is, if you look at like ad writers or the admin, it's the right message, the right person, and the right channel. It's really that kind of simple. We can obviously, like you kind of described, there's a lot of complexities with technical, creative, and so many positions in marketing that, there's just so many things to it that sometimes it can seem super complex, and that's maybe where it starts to break down, is where we keep it or think about it in the complexity rather than just going to the roots, the fundamentals, and then building up from there. It's a good definition. So what's one of your strongest held beliefs about marketing that it's a hill you're willing to die on, and maybe not everybody kind of has a similar belief as you about marketing?
Disruptur is the name of my company. So the hill I'm willing to die on is whatever got you here is not going to get you where you need to go. And I think this fear of doing things differently is something that we don't talk about. We might not even admit, but I believe that you need to do something very, very bold. I think if you want to make yourself known as a marketer, whether it's your organization or whether it's, that's your business, then you need to do things differently. Especially on the creative side. I mean, if you look at any single piece of marketing that you've ever loved, or admired, what was unique about that specific marketing? It wasn't that it was similar to everything else. I mean, maybe, but I bet you 10 out of 10 times it was really different. Something about it that was like, dude. And then it just becomes the way. Then everybody's doing it. Everybody's copying it. And the hill I want to die on is doing something different every single time. Let's get crazy.
I like that. So what gets in the way of people doing that, doing things different, constantly disrupting their typical ways of doing it? What's like some of those main roadblocks
Fear.
or things that
Fear.
stop people?
Fear. It's the, well, I don't want to get fired. I don't want to make a mistake. Especially if you're working for someone, it's, marketers live and die by the conversion rates that their stuff, tracks, right? And it's making small changes to increase that conversion rate. And half the time you're going into a meeting with leadership, your stakeholders, or whoever it is, and you're having to dive into why you think something didn't convert or not convert. And I think the answer that we don't say is because, you know what, we're too big of, we're too afraid to try something different because we're so worried a client's going to leave us. I mean, I got to imagine the boldness that you show will pick up new clients that want to do that versus the ones that want to play it safe.
Definitely.
I have no interest in doing something the way something's always been done.
Yeah. So what are ways to get over that fear? Maybe you kind of just had a little bit in there that you got to see that you'll gain more, you'll lose some obviously by being different and bold, but what are some ways to overcome the fear that is inherent in doing something different or trying something new that you've never done before?
That would go back to just my formal sales training, and that is just setting expectations, and learning how to communicate. So before we do anything, I would probably have a conversation with you. And if let's say you're my boss, right? Or you're my client, like, hey, I don't know what the results of this are going to be. All I can tell you is that you have not done this in the past and your competition hasn't done it in the past. Right? So the expectation is, I don't know what's going to happen, but getting fired, right, or failing is only a step in the process to move forward. It isn't a step back. So getting over that fear, I think, is just setting expectations.
Do you, when you, let's just say you're doing a specific thing that's different, maybe doing a podcast that's not normal and it's very different, do you set up, because obviously expectations you could argue are goals, but do you set up goals or hypotheses that allow you to pivot or change, especially if it's like a long-term thing? Like obviously you do one ad that's super crazy different, it's just one ad, but let's say, hey, we're going to start interviewing, X or whatever that kind of different thing is in this way. Like, how do you kind of see it through, quote unquote, through goals and hypotheses, and like you kind of already set expectations?
Well, I think there's some of the obvious things, right? So wherever you create an ad, typically if you're going to do a paid ad, it's going to tell you or predict for you what your projected conversion will actually be. So you can always use those tools, but it's the unknown, I think, that is the most exciting thing, because, it's not like you put your address in to help you find direction somewhere. Maybe you're like me. I'm always trying to beat the time it tells me it's going to take. I want to do that with whatever it is, whether that's, we're not Facebook, we're not Google, right? We put $100 in or whatever our spend is, and it tells us, this is how many people your content's going to be in front of, and here's what you can expect to see in return. We're not. Those tools have figured that out. We can use our best judgment and all of our experience to try and put together, some sort of predictability or guesstimate, but that's all it is.
And how do you know when something, I guess you obviously know through the results of if it did or didn't work and you should continue doing it, but like, how do you know if that different is something you should continue doing? Or I guess to your point, like when others start to copy it, when you need to do something different, from doing that different thing? Like, how do you, is there anything, and obviously it could just be gut, it could be just kind of knowing like, hey, this is working, or hey, it's time to pivot, but do you have any frameworks or ways to make that easier to know?
I think, I talk to a lot of companies. It's interesting coming from the roofing industry in on the technology side. I will hand it to Joe Hoffman, who was the CEO of Roofle, who I worked for. Joe knew exactly what the cost per lead was. Lead acquisition cost. It's interesting. I talk to companies, they don't even know. Yeah, I guarantee you talk to anybody in construction, they know because they've been paying some lead aggregate a certain amount for leads forever. So they know that, it's $400 to get a lead and they need 4 leads to make a sale. I think you really need to understand, like, the acquisition cost for a customer, the acquisition cost for a lead. And if you look at a campaign and say, okay, if we're going to spend X amount on it, we need, for this to be determined successful, we need to have a very specific amount of clients come out of this. And that should be your goal. If you know your cost per lead acquisition, you probably know your the lifetime value of a client. If your lifetime value of a client is $1 million and it only costs you $25,000 to get a client, you'd probably be willing to, I don't know, spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a
Okay,
return.
so that's a good way then, obviously. Is it lowering, or is whatever that new different way, is it, somewhat cheaper or better at acquiring the customers? But obviously, to your point, you have to first understand what that cost of acquisition is before you even can kind of try to improve it. So it's a good way. So I saw recently on LinkedIn you posted a thing through Disruptur about kind of, I don't know if it was a guide or just a way of making social content easier, and there's kind of a few steps to it. I guess before I kind of discuss any of the parts of it, was it just what was the origin or the emphasis for creating that piece of content?
Yeah, and I'm going to apologize. I missed what you said. I'm texting my wife right now because my son is on the other side of this wall shooting baskets because they got school canceled, and all I hear is the rim.
No worries. That's good. That's what I love about this podcast.
And I already sent a text saying, please have Chase stop. And then I sent another text that said, seriously, forgive me.
Oh, geez. Well, I hope it. No, totally fine. That's what I like about podcasts. We keep it rolling. So you created the social content made easy kind of guide. What was the reason? Is it just because a lot of people think making content is difficult or creating good content? Like, what was the origin for that guide before I dive into some more questions on it?
Well, thanks for being one of the 10 people that read that article. I wrote that article because I'm working on developing Disruptor, so I felt it was necessary to at least talk about some of the processes that I have. But everybody's talking about personal brand. And let me just say this, and I think it's really important. People were talking about personal brand in 2012. But because of a pandemic and everybody having to relearn how to communicate with customers, now all of a sudden it's back on the forefront, where most of us who've been, we're beyond personal brand, know that is almost a cliche at this point. So I think it's really important that you understand what type of content works and why you're doing the content, or, because you don't even know what to post in the first place. Like, you just post whatever. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't post whatever I want, but if I'm working for a company and we have an initiative to say it's to push some type of service offering, and my marketing team is pushing that, then I don't want to share the content they're putting out, but I want to be aligned with that content. And so I'm going to start talking about something that I think you can loosely tie back to that or relate to that, but we're both driving in the same direction versus driving the opposite ways. and there's never any coordination, right? It's like the marketing team is on call to do everything, and the sales team, they don't provide any feedback. Look, I was a salesperson. We don't provide any feedback about what the customers or prospective customers are saying. And we sure as heck don't put anything in CRM to give marketers any type of insight. And then marketers come back and they try to tell us, salespeople, who our customers are. This is our customer. Like, how do you know? You don't talk to them. Why it's so disparate is beyond me. Why don't they just communicate with each other on a regular basis and be open to the fact that, I don't know what I don't know.
No, that's good. So kind of at the core of your posts then is as you articulated that, it made more sense, is really that alignment, because a lot of the steps in it are, meeting, marketing and sales kind of meeting together, discussing, and really kind of becoming more of a team rather than the siloed kind of parts that they are in many organizations. Is that kind of a good way to sum up maybe the premise of it? Obviously your steps are very actionable and very, good, but like as a premise, is that kind of what it is about, is more or less mending, having that overlap with sales and marketing to truly create content that the person on the other side wants, because marketing's getting feedback, insights from sales to thus create better or have a better image of that customer to create better content.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Great. Awesome. Well, definitely recommend to the 2 to 3 people listening to this podcast, check that out on Derek's LinkedIn. I thought it was pretty cool, pretty interesting. It's not a long read. I'm always nervous when I see guide. So I'm like, oh no, or kind of like any sort of that. I always am nervous of spending too much time, but it's a quick read. And he also kind of puts all the steps in order, which is good for people who don't want to read.
Actually, so starting today, I don't want to call it a podcast, but it's on Apple Podcasts. All the articles I write, I'm going to read, but it's not going to sound like I'm reading them. There's a lot of sidebars that happen, and some of my thought processes. I write some of this stuff, so I want it to seem more like a conversation, but it's just, typically it's going to be like 5 to 15 minutes of me walking through what I wrote, so that, people that are worried about too long of a read, or as I say in one of the podcasts, a lot of times when I read something, I can't physically read anything tangible. I fall asleep. Flipping through the pages, I'm out. As soon as I stop, I'm done. It's back to life. But I absorb an abundance, a copious amounts of books. So I'll listen to a book, and in the car, it is a lifesaver. It's like the opposite of NyQuil. It keeps me up. So I'll listen to as much as I possibly can. So I want to give people the opportunity to listen to it. Plus, it gives me another outlet to share organically some of the things I'm doing, different mediums to have people absorb that content. So
yeah,
you asked me earlier what I'm obsessed about. Yeah, what I'm obsessed about. I don't have an Instagram page for Disruptur. I am obsessed with figuring out how to make this work, because I have a significant amount of content, and I have a significant amount of content, personal content. I do these passion project videos, and as Disruptur gets into this creative, campaign driven sort of mission, how can I take those and incorporate those into the creative side of what I do? With that in mind, I'm really trying to learn and absorb as much as I can about Instagram, with the potential idea of actually bringing on somebody to help me with that in the next few months.
Interesting. So. Yeah, Instagram, every social platform is pretty different. Obviously, there's some like LinkedIn, Twitter is kind of text-based heavy, but yeah, to really understand those, for me, I've given up on some of those platforms, and like you're kind of talking about, just better to add somebody to the team that, or outsource through somebody that knows it, to
Right.
effectively do it. But yeah, thanks for sharing the podcast. If people want to, rather than read it, listen to it, that's definitely a good resource. So I think a question that I like to kind of ask people just to see how they think about it is, how do you define good and bad marketing? And obviously you can rebuttal that with good and bad is more of just a perception, and it doesn't, it matters more in the eye of the perceiver. But like, how do you look at something and say that's good marketing? How do you look at something and say, that's pretty bad marketing? Is there a way that you think of that, or do you not think in those terms?
No, I do. It's a really good question. It sort of falls in line of what I was referring to earlier. So I think depending on the lens in which you're viewing it from, if you're viewing it from the creative side, the cleverness of it, is it original? In my opinion, if it's not original, it's not good. I don't want to see a copy of anything. So, give you an example from the Super Bowl. Verizon went first in the third quarter and talked about their new 5G home internet service, which works just like your cell phone, but is wireless, connects your whole home to the internet. It did, in my opinion, a pretty original ad with Jim Carrey as the cable guy. Super funny. T-Mobile did the exact same thing with the guys from Scrubs in the fourth quarter, and I thought it sucked. And look, I'm not a critic. I don't want to sit here and say that they could have did something better, but I feel like, and obviously these companies have an entire marketing plan. It's not just an ad, right? So there's a lot more to that. But I felt like the copy of that in their own, I think they could have done something a little different. But again, I can't tell you if it worked or didn't work because I'm not them. So from the creative side, I'd say if it's original, it's good. If it's not original, then I don't think it's that good. And obviously that goes well beyond ads, right, or commercials. But the other side to whether or not it's good or not would be on the technical side. So I think I think one of the big trends in marketing in 2022, which is taking the B2C model and putting it into the B2B model, which is really one of the reasons I'm very interested in Instagram, because let's be honest, Instagram ads get you. They get us all. And it's that idea of you took the bait on some engaging content, and now they continually put new things in front of you to keep you interested rather than the same thing in front of you. And I like that a lot. So when I see a company doing that, you go through my Instagram, I can't tell you how many ads there are because I've paid such close attention to some of the things that I've liked that now I'm getting targeted by. I have no desire to buy these things, and then I end up buying them because the marketing's so good. And I love the B2C approach, and that's really a funnel that somebody created, and likely could be even deeper than that with some sort of segmented audience. So yeah, I think that's how I would define it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I enjoyed those examples of the ads. I also found the Verizon one to be quite funny, and to your point, it was different, original, even though it used, obviously, I forget the guy's name, but the movie. So like it wasn't, in a sense, but how they did it. Yeah. No, I like that. And then that's the second time now on a podcast I've heard that taking B2C approaches to B2B. So with everything in life, I love to find themes or commonalities. And that's one that I'm continually hearing, not even just in my conversations, but on podcasts I'm listening and stuff. So that's key for B2B, especially to kind of adopt that B2C, just because we're so used to buying B2C now because of all the avenues, buying on Instagram, buying Amazon, all these things that no matter what company you're in, you're just used to B2C buying. So it helps to try to replicate that. But to your core premise, you got to be different too a little bit. You got to have a kind of a tilt to it. So no, I like that a lot. So to wrap it up, I always have two questions. Obviously, this could change in the future as I'm early in the process of doing this podcast, but I have two kind of final questions. One about all the stuff we've been talking about, and then one is going to be kind of a little bit off. topic, but kind of related. So the first question is, what is one thing you've changed your mind on in regards to marketing in the past 1 to 2 years?
Did you say changed my mind?
Yeah, so I believed this. I believe Gary Vee put as much content out as I can. Now, I believe put quality content out once a week. Like, what is something you've radically changed your mind on and been like, I was wrong, or I was kind of wrong, and now I believe something differently?
Ooh, I don't know, because I don't know a good answer to that. I've been so focused on absorbing as much as I possibly can.
Hmm. So changing all the time, whatever, kind of hearing experts always kind of not really having any solid in-ground beliefs, or what do you mean by just always absorbing?
I mean, I think any good marketer is always looking to improve their craft, doing as much research as possible. I don't know if I necessarily fall into that category, but I've worked with some people that do, and they've been a good example for me to always pay attention to some of the things that other people are doing. I think conceptually, something that has changed for me is this idea that everyone is in sales. And if you hang on a second, I'll tie this together. So my generation and the generations that came before me would tell you that everybody within the company is in sales. That, always be closing mentality, like, without sales, it all stops. That's not necessarily false now, but I think we've evolved into, one, people brag about the things that they buy and they get mad about the things that they were sold. So I think we got to be really careful about saying we're in sales, right? Because nobody wants to be sold anything.
Hmm.
But I think the transition is now that everybody's in marketing. Because in the past, it was like, well, marketing does their thing. They bring us leads, and we don't really know or can't explain how they do what they do, but we're doing our own thing. I think that's crap. I think now every single person within an organization is in marketing because of the access to information and the significance of establishing credibility and trust. So every single person in an organization, in my opinion, should be, for lack of a better phrase, under the influence of marketing, meaning they're playing some sort of role in marketing, whether that's starting a conversation, joining a conversation, or supporting the people that do. And defining what your role is, I think could make or break whether or not your company is successful.
That's good. Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
a podcast. Oh, keep going, keep going.
well, I'll just say this. If you just look at the concept of earned, paid, and owned media. So you create your own content, that's your own media. Everybody probably knows what that is. But if you have a large organization, and large is relevant to whoever is looking at the organization, but let's say for Disruptor, right, my ideal client would probably be, perfect client would be 200 to 500 employees with a pretty decent mid-sized sales and marketing team. The opportunity to lower your paid spend and earn media with people that are engaged within your organization, it's such an opportunity. Why wouldn't you try to lead by example and encourage employee engagement and train them, or at least give them insight on what they can do to help? And if you can, get them involved. I don't mean involved like, hey, like this post or share this content. Let's take it a step further. Let's get them in the content. Let's have them contribute to creating the content. I mean, I can't tell you how many CEOs I've talked to or leaders in an organization are like, well, I'm not in marketing. My marketing team does that. I'm like, bull crap. You're in marketing. It's time to figure out your role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think everything is marketing and marketing is everything. Yeah, you can really expand what marketing is into your point, kind of how maybe the old way was, say, everybody's in sales. I definitely agree with you. Everybody's in marketing with the intent, obviously, to eventually have someone buy your product or your service, rather than trying to always in that ABC, always be closing, always be selling somebody something. Nobody likes that anymore. With the options we have, I think we run from people that do that to us. So no, that's a good change of mind, or a kind of a refining. Like you said, it's not totally not true. We have to sell, you have to sell, but it's just a little bit of a different mindset, which I think is cool that you shared that. So the final question, and this is a question I love just because it really shows some insights as to how to improve without trying to improve in that sense. But the question is what is 1 to 2 things you do outside of business and marketing that improves your ability to do business and marketing?
Oh, man. I mean, these are big questions. You got to send me these in an email ahead of time.
I like the off-the-cuff response.
Yeah, I immediately know the answer. I'm trying to figure out how I say it. What are the things I do outside of sales and marketing that help me do sales and marketing? Is that the question?
Mm-hmm. Essentially.
Well, this might sound vague. Live your life. And here's why. Marketing, I know I said, is putting your stuff in front of other people, but it'll always be original if it's authentic. Always. If it's authenticity is always original. If you go and live your life and have your own experiences, you'll be able to tell a story. You can call it vulnerable, you can call it whatever you want, but somebody will relate to that. And I try to do my best. I shouldn't say try, I do as much as I possibly can outside of work so that I can take those experiences and relate to other people when I'm at work. The separation of work and life, like, well, I'm at work, so I can't be me, or I'm being me, so I'm not going to talk about work, is over. COVID ended that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see my camera, but this is my son's old bedroom that I converted to an office. Guess when I did that? During COVID. Guess where my bed is? My bed is 15 feet that way. I am always available. And that's really unfortunate, but it's kind of how it goes. COVID basically exposed our availability. I mean, you went from being worried about being productive while you're at home to being like way more productive than you ever imagined you would be. And part of that is the fact that your boss knows that if you need to look something up, you can do it right away. Why don't you go get on your computer real quick and check this out? Hey, you sitting down? Can you look at this?
Yeah. No, that's good.
We're available. Work and life. We have to find a way to balance it, but it is to try and sit here, Jordan, and say that and only view you as, like, if I were to only see you as somebody that hosts a podcast, would I really be seeing you as a human being? And if all I saw you at host a podcast, would I really know how to relate to you other than talk to you about, a new microphone or some sort of software or marketing that you can use to get in front of you? I got a better opportunity to relate to you with some sort of shared experience that we both have that isn't related to marketing than I would about marketing. And some reason, somebody said we can't do that. I want to know who that was. I want to go back in time and talk to them. They're probably the same person that said you need to wear a dress shirt and tie to work every day. Why? I know what will make somebody more productive if they're really uncomfortable.
Yeah, we gotta roast that guy on the stake for sure. Whoever said those things, but yeah, no, I like that. Living life. I think as I read about writing, some of the best writing comes actually when you're not in front of the page or the screen. It's when you're living life and you, like you said, you're creating experiences, or you're just understanding the human experience better. And you only do that when you're not creating or you could argue you're always creating. It's just you're living life, which is a creation of experiences and stuff. So that's a good one. I haven't heard that one. I mean, I've heard it kind of, because live life, I could obviously dig deeper of like, what does that mean to you, going for hikes, going for walks? But I think that's sufficient of just, get outside or I guess you don't have to get outside, but do something else, and doing that something else will improve the marketing, the sales, the business that you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
I mean, go to movies, listen to music, read books, and don't read books about marketing. Read books about something inspiring.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln or something like that, definitely.
Like.
Yeah. Okay, to finish it off, Derek, I always want to just open up the room for you to share anything. I mean, we've talked a little bit about your podcast where you're reading articles and your articles. Anything else you want to plug before we kind of wrap the show up?
Two things. One, later in this spring, I'll have a class that people can take and sign up for. So right now I do half day, full day speaking engagement workshops, actual workshops, not a inspirational talk where you leave and you're like motivated and inspired. No, a workshop is something where you interact and you walk away with exact steps and action items, knowing how to do them right away. I want to take that. I am taking that and breaking that up into a series of classes that you can purchase at a much cheaper rate. So the person that, is a one-man show, is looking to implement some things but doesn't know how, can easily do that. As a result, the hiring me to come in and speak will be increased, as you probably would expect. That is something that I'm definitely excited about. And then I do believe that the success of a brand is determined by whether or not people actually want swag, for lack of a better way to explain it. Like, do they want do they want a t-shirt? Are they going to wear the t-shirt? Are they willing to spend money to have the logo? And I think that's interesting. And I think when I created Disruptur, I wanted to have that allure. So
you have
I got that going on.
Okay,
so I'm
awesome.
actually gonna have drop shipping, and you're gonna be able to, like, right now you can, I have it's not linked to my site yet, but you can buy swag. Okay. And I think it's pretty clever swag. I mean, I got a t-shirt with Kanye on it. I got a t-shirt with EV on it.
Hey, there we go. So the classes, the courses you were talking about, that'll be found on Disruptur's website, or when those do come live?
Yeah, that'll be later this spring on my site.
Okay, perfect. Well, definitely keep that in mind if you enjoyed Derek's content and like you said, you want actionable and not inspirational. Well, maybe a little inspirational, but no, that's awesome, Derek. I appreciate you coming on the show, and thank you for entertaining for 40-some minutes. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Good luck to you.
Thank you. And the show is over.